Hey there, grade six. We have a new, or we, I have a new video for you guys on. We're going to get into our new unit on geometry, and so this first lesson is called angles. This is sort of our first foray into geometry this year, and what's going to happen is that we're going to start with a pretty basic introduction, stuff that you might be familiar with or remember from last year. But you're going to identify and draw line segments and lines and rays and angles. And here is where we start. We have two little diagrams on here. In geometry, we deal with lots of different objects. The object at the top here, that's this guy, it's called a point. And then below that, this guy is called, it's called a line segment. A line segment is a straight path between the 2 points. So here we have point, and this is a straight path between those 2 points. So it's a line segment. Notice this is now another diagram. This is a little bit different. This is now called a line. Notice that instead of endpoints, we have arrows, which indicate that the line, or that this line goes in both directions forever. And so that is probably one of the key characteristic differences between a line segment and a line, is that lines have the arrows and tell that they go on forever. You also cannot measure the length of a line because it goes on forever. Although I suppose if you do measure it, it would just be infinity centimeters or meters. So again, just to really reinforce this, the one with the dots, this is a line segment. You can measure this. It has a start and an end point. And then this is a line. The arrows mean that it goes on in both directions forever. Now, this one is called a ray. Notice that it's now got one dot, or one end point, or 1 point, and that it goes on in one direction forever, because there's only one arrow. Okay, and so here we have a bunch of different rays, and the question is, which way can these rays be extended? Well, it's always the direction that the arrow is pointing. That is the way that they can be extended. They can't ever get extended past the point, but they can get extended past the arrows, right? And so, I mean, one of the things you can think about in terms of identifying rays is you can think about a sun's rays. It starts from the sun. So if you imagine that those points are like the sun, and then the ray extends out from the sun. It's like a ray in real life. Ray extends in a straight line. Okay. So what we do is we take our rays and we can actually join two rays at this common endpoint, and then what we can do is we can form an angle. So these two rays have a common endpoint and it makes an angle. When we deal with angles, the common endpoint of the ray is very easy to see. So there's no need to draw a dot to show it. In other words, like this is here to show you that there is that common endpoint, but generally speaking, you don't have to put a dot to show a ray. Okay. So then some common words that we need to be familiar with. The point where the two rays meet, that's called a vertex. And I think we talked about vertices before. They're corners. They're places where two lines meet. These two things here, they're called the arms of the angle. And then there's something in gray. This is just, if you have more than one vertex, then the plural is vertices. So in a square, you have 4 vertices. There are 4 corners, right? The next thing to start pointing out is the difference in the size of angles. These angles here are smaller, and as we move to the right, they get progressively larger. And so that's really what we need to talk about there. And then what I want to show here is that these angles have different length arms. However, the size of the angle itself, the measurement of the angle, is the same. So even though this one here is longer than this one, the measure of the angle is still the same. Okay. Likewise, actually not likewise, the arms are shorter on this one, but the size of the angle is actually greater in this one than in this one, which has larger arms. Okay. And then again, notice this one's got 2 very differently sized arms, very small angle. This one is quite a large angle, but it's got very short arms. And so again, it doesn't matter about the length of the arms. What really matters is sort of the distance between them. That's what we're measuring in an angle. Okay. This term we should be very familiar with. A right angle, it is like a corner in a square or any kind of rectangle like that. Square rectangles where you find those 90-degree angles. That's always a right angle. And so then moving on from a right angle, this is called a straight angle. We're not going to talk necessarily about how many degrees it is, although it's 180 degrees, much like right angles are 90 degrees. But this is 180 degrees. It's called a straight angle. It's a line that's got a point in the middle. So these two here would be the two arms, and then that would be the vertex actually. You can also have an angle that makes a greater than straight angles. This one's actually called a reflex angle. You can measure the inside here, but they are actually choosing to measure the outside part here. And so this, because it's bigger than 180, is called a reflex angle. And those are actually all the different kinds of angles. There's an angle that is smaller than a right angle is called an acute angle. A right angle is a right angle, it's 90 degrees. An angle that is bigger than 90 degrees but less than 180 is called an obtuse angle. And a straight angle is 180 degrees. And then any angle that is bigger than 180 degrees all the way up to 359 degrees is called a reflex angle. And so that is like a 6.5 minute introduction to some of these geometric terms in terms of angles. So we've been introduced to points and line segments and lines and rays and angles. We talked about, I shared with you stuff about acute angles, right angles, obtuse angles, straight angles, and reflex angles. And we talked about some other words in terms of like arms and vertex and vertice. And so that's really kind of what you need to know in terms of explanation for this lesson. I'm just going through my stuff here real quick. Yeah, you kind of got all the stuff that you needed to do the practice. That's on page 90, I think it's 93 and 94. Yeah. And so I want you to work through the practice on 93 and 94. And then if you have questions, obviously drop into office hours and we can chat about it. Anyway, have a great day, guys. This is the practice. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.